What's up? This is Skratch Bastid and welcome to Skratch School. Today we're going to talk about digital vinyl systems, or DVS. Now when you see someone playing with turntables in a computer, you might be wondering what's going on there. It's DVS. Let me explain. Turntables play records, we all know that. Where do records come from? Records come from a pressing plant where many copies of a certain record are made and then distributed to people that want to buy them. When we bring them home, we play them through a needle and we hear a sound back. Now this is great, but one problem with this process is that the records physically have to be pressed, and there are limitations to that. There's time. It takes time for the records to get pressed. There's certain records can get in bad condition, in bad shape. They might get scratches, not the good kind, but the back and forth kind that stop records from playing. And of course, physical distribution of records. Sometimes you can't get a record in a certain part of the world. In 2001, the DJing world changed with the introduction of DVS. What DVS allows DJs to do is not play a physical copy of the song, but instead play a record with an analog signal that the computer understands and assigns a digital song to this file by playing it back through the computer. Let me explain. As you can see here, these are physical records, but the content of them is not what you might think it is. It's not exactly the type of thing you'd want to listen to in your spare time. But this is a signal that is essential for DJs. This is what we call a timecode or a timestamp, and it gives a position of where it is on a record. The sound that you're hearing is then sent to an analog to digital converter, which talks to the computer and tells the computer what position the vinyl is in. By using that information, the computer can take an assigned file, whether it's a WAV, MP3, maybe even an MP4, videos work as well, and control that file according to the movements of your hand on the record or according to the speed that the turntable is playing at. The contents of that file are then sent back through a digital to analog converter and out the mixer as audio or video. And this is why this system is so advantageous to DJs. For a number of reasons. You don't have to wait for records to get pressed. You can literally play or scratch any file that you have, so you can do a lot of experimenting, and we don't have to buy as many records. I know a lot of the vinyl purists can hate on this from time to time, but I love records. I've got a lot of records and I still love DVS. Why? Because we want to use technology to take the art form further. Over the last 15 years, there's been many DVS systems to come and go. Two that have stood the test of time are Serato and Traktor. Now let's try this in action. When we move the record back and forth and just hear what's playing on the record, you'll hear the timecode going back and forth. If I switch to the signal that's coming back from the computer, you're going to hear not the timecode sound, but the digital file going back and forth from the computer. I could actually switch between the two of them and you'd hear that I'm doing the same exact thing. Pretty cool, right? Now, of course, this isn't only for scratching. With mixing, you can hear the tone change as I move the pitch down and up. And the computer interprets the signal and plays the file slower or faster depending on what speed the signal is getting to the computer. The sound of the control record depends on what system you're using, and every system has their own proprietary signal. So I can't use Serato records with Traktor and Traktor records with Serato, etc. You'll see that the Serato record sounds like this, as we've heard, and the Traktor record sounds like this. In fact, the Traktor record is twice the oscillation, or twice the speed of a Serato record. Now, obviously there's a difference between the two, and there are pros and cons to using any system, but I challenge you to figure out what you like the best. For me, I've stuck with Serato because it's been reliable for me and I enjoy it in my day-to-day DJ use, so find what works for you and stick with it. One of the advantages to using DVS is that signal can be interpreted in different ways, as opposed to a record where it's just physically what is pressed on the record that you're going to be hearing. This digital signal can either be interpreted as a strict timed position, or it can be interpreted as a relative position, simply moving forwards or backwards. This feature in Serato is called relative mode. In relative mode, it actually doesn't matter which groove I'm in, it's just reading whether or not I'm moving it backwards and forwards. So if I'm scratching and the table might be vibrating, or maybe my hand is too heavy, and I move the needle by mistake over 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 grooves, it doesn't really matter as long as it keeps getting some signal back and forth. This is a major advantage for scratch DJs and club DJs looking to avoid deadly skips that will ruin your dance floor. The other major advantage of this is that we can then use hot cues or cue points while the record is playing and continue to be able to scratch wherever we are. That's something that would have never been possible with physical records because you keep changing the sound that's on the record. It's actually amazing and has allowed me to do stuff like play with the Toronto Symphony and do work with the string quartet and do work with bands and rap groups even without pressing physical copies of vinyl. And this is why I defend digital vinyl systems. Some people say it killed vinyl. I think it kept turntables relevant because without these features, they could have been outrun by controllers or CDJs. Long live the turntable as a DJ accessory. Now, because DVS uses analog signal, it's important to remember to keep your gear in good shape. Make sure your record is clean of dirt and change them often as they might become worn down over time from playing the same record over and over again. Make sure your needle is in good shape and doesn't have any dirt on it, which might affect the analog signal going to the computer. Make sure your turntable is in good working condition and receiving a clean signal to the mixer or to your analog to digital converter box, whatever that may be. And make sure the signal is clear of any kind of extra vibration, which is a problem in clubs sometimes, or the table moving, or if you're DJing in wind. Make sure you're getting a clean signal to your program. Now, because you end up sending a digital signal back to the mixer, some people say, why even bother using turntables in the first place? But what I say is that I think that the turntable is a great physical controller for sound. Scratching was made through turntables to start, so the sounds created by your hand moving back and forth have shaped the sound of scratching. Now, that doesn't mean you can't scratch with a CDJ or a controller, but there are some inherent qualities of the sound of scratching with the turntable that make it sound a certain way that I have grown to love. So that's why I like to use turntables. But I do think it's important as a DJ to be versatile on equipment, so I'm definitely not against CDJs or controllers. So if you can scratch on those, all the power to you. So hopefully this answers the question of why you see a DJ with a computer and records, and that the records aren't changing, but the sounds are. This is DVS, and this is the technology that has helped DJs do amazing things in the 2000s. This is Skratch Bastid signing off for Skratch School. If you've got an idea for a video, make sure you let us know over at skratchschool.com, and we'll see what we can do for you. Here's DVS.
Skratch Bastid.